Greetings, ladies and mental gents, and welcome to my channel, where I like to make audio narrations of various stories from the internet. In this video, we'll be focusing on a story from the subreddit HFY called Bavarian Hospitality, written by Regal Legal Eagle. The link to the original story will be down below, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. As humanity began to find out who else was in their cosmic neighborhood, they found some species who were similar and some who were entirely different. But something that seemed to be universal was that these species were fairly homogeneous. At some point, one nation, or religion, or ideology took a hold of their cultures and they were unified before they ever reached the stars. Humans had been struggling against one another for as long as history had been recorded, and likely had been going on long before that. No one had ever seemed to get the upper hand. As one nation, or religion, or ideology got strong enough to take a hold and gain critical mass, something would happen. A conqueror would arise, a new prophet, or a new philosophy. Human culture was quickly becoming dominated simply because it gave the Xenos a vast wealth of choices, something that they'd been lacking. One of the most popular trends of the day were for groups of Xenos to pool their funds and take a cultural journey from round Earth, visiting as many different parties and festivals as they could for the sake of trying to get even a tiny glimpse of the unique offerings that the humans brought to the galaxy. No species had as many parties, got drunk as often, or arranged in festivals as the humans. This had spurred on a golden age for humanity, free to expand and trade as Xenos practically tripped over themselves in their attempts to befriend the species who threw the best parties there ever were. We focus now on these groups of Xenos traveling around the world. 5 Kresh brothers from the Alusian Empire, a species of humanoid amphibians with various breeds depending on the needs of the hives. Originally, they'd been enemies of the humans, getting into several border conflicts with them until the Atlusians had discovered the incredible culture humanity had to offer. Since then, most of the warriors who'd been bred had to be repurposed to their need in battle no longer necessary. As such, most of them were still soft-shelled, untested and hardened through battle. The Hive Shepherds instead sent them into humanity's territory in an attempt to learn more about what made the humans so special. This group had been on Earth for a month now, touring the area humans referred to as Europe. They'd wandered museums, ancient towns, ruins from thousands of years ago, and more. The desire humans had to hold onto the past was insatiable. It was a part of who they were, no matter where they went. The first true festival that the brothers got to experience was the nation known as Bavaria. They filed off one of the mag rail trains into the city known as Munich, eyes wide as they saw the massive crowds of people. "What's this place called again?" Nakchik asked as he gave the smallest amongst them a nudge. He had his olfactory receptor in a book. "They call it Oktoberfest. Hundreds of years ago, there was some sort of big wedding that got so out of control that it went on for like a month. So now they celebrate by trying to copy what happened back then. They drink lots of beer and eat sausages and other foods in beer halls." The brothers were grinning and laughing at the sounds of that. A party dedicated to a party. Was there nothing these humans wouldn't use as an excuse to drink and eat? Everywhere they looked, there were humans in strange clothes and hats, holding massive cups of beer, talking and laughing as the Xenos tried to figure out where to go. Many of the brothers were eyeing the human woman as well. They had a striking appearance to the Kreshni of myth, and most strong-blooded warriors had plenty of appreciation for this particular myth from their own history. Only Vrekchek wasn't paying attention to the people since he was still reading. "Hopefully we'll find a beer hall that'll take us in, and we can join the party," he was saying. "I'm fairly sure that the party is everywhere, Vrekchek." Kainchek said, as with a laugh, shaking his smaller warrior as he waved a hand. "Look, they're a beautiful woman, and the strange music that's all around us." "Yes, but we stand out. They're all those special clothes," Brekchek said, pointing out. They started to press through the crowds of the humans, then trying to find some place to go, when Rekchek pointed out the sign to the small winding alley that promised to have what they were looking for. Breaking out of the mass of people, they wandered down the alley into a shop. They saw an old woman behind a wooden counter. All around them were the clothes that they'd seen, the various size hats and hanging from hooks. As she saw them enter, a certain light seemed to fill her eyes, and while their translators weren't programmed with the local language, Rekchek had learned some of his own. He thought she muttered something like, "Althusians, they'll be perfect." But he couldn't be sure before she spoke up in English, which their translator did know. "Welcome to my shop. Please, come in, come in. All are welcome during this holiday." The woman stepped out from behind the counter. "5 more to celebrate the wonderful Oktoberfest, y'all. Let me treat you to some appropriate clothes." "Well, how much would that cost? We have to watch our funds," Freshchik said, always the one worried. "Nonsense, you're guests in my country, here to partake in our greatest party of them all. No charge, no charge." They grinned as she began to wave them away from the door and into her shop. Their similar shape to humans made it easy to find them proper lederhosen, alpine hats and traction shirts. They spotted a clawed feet, so the usual knee socks weren't really an option. Even so, she found them properly sized clothes and would wave them into the changing rooms, which were a little small. But they were soon dressed up in the fine Bavarian style, and the old woman looked them over. "Ja, das goed." She was particularly eyeing Nekchek, and the biggest one of them and the de facto leader. "Do you fine boys have reservations? You seem to be wandering around like a lost child. Did you plan for all the people?" "To be honest, we didn't, ma'am," Rekchek responded. "Ah, well, then you'll have to come and join my family. We are our own private hall for this holiday. Very old. True to the ancient customs. You must come and join me and my guests." "Your hospitality puts us to shame, ma'am. Is there anything that I could offer you? Our funds aren't especially plentiful," Nekchek was saying as she waved his offer away. Nine. You're my guests. Your presence was all I require." The woman waved them back outside. "I'll keep your possessions here in my shop so that they aren't lost. We'll return for them later." Once they were outside, she locked up her shop and nodded, motioning for them to follow her deeper through the ancient winding streets. Soon they were standing in front of an incredibly old-looking building. On the exterior were various wood carvings, mostly depicting some sort of hunt, and a fierce-looking creature with pointed horns, Rekchek identified as a stag. There was a massive human, about the size of Nekchek, waiting outside. "There you are, Grandmama. Who are your guests that you brought to our family's beer hall? They are fine visitors from another world, here to experience our festival." "Ah, well, welcome then, friends. You will find no more accommodating hosts in all of Bavaria," the human said with a wide grin, waving them into the hall behind his grandmother. They entered the old wooden hall, spotting a few hundred people inside. There was much noise with laughter, talking filling the air, plus that strange yet comforting music being played by the band near the back. The grandmother and grandson led the way forward, finding them a table near the band, waving over a few women holding the massive cups that they'd seen. "Look on the legs on them," Kenchuk said with a gasp, thankfully speaking Krish to them all so that humans wouldn't understand. His eyes were set firmly on the fine Bavarian woman who set one of the massive cups down for each of the Althusians and one for the grandson. He raised his mugs. "This is a stain. So long as you are here as our guests, we shall fill it with only the best beer we make. So partake and enjoy. Prost!" he said, and he pulled up the mug to his lips, tilting his head back, and neither watched in surprise as he drank the whole thing in one long pull. Then he slammed it on the table with a big grin. "Welcome to Bavaria." The Althusians cheered and raised their mugs, clanking them together as they started to drink, each at their own level. Only Nekchek could match the human in downing his whole in one go. After he finished, he had to cough and catch his breath. The others laughed, and Freshchek slapped him on the back for a moment. They were already in high spirits thanks to the hospitality that they had been shown. but the warmth spreading through them now grew to strong beer. "This is simply incredible," Kainchek said, when he looked out over the beer hall. "I have to agree with you, Kainchek," Frekchek said, making an unusual agreement with the pressure warrior. "The woodworking is incredible, and the age of this building is beyond anything that we've ever seen back home. We're so quick to tear things down." "I wasn't talking about the boring skirt. What I was talking about is those skirts, those legs." He was eyeing the woman walking around with a very lusty mindset. Freshchek shook his head. "Careful, Kainchek. We might like them, but there is no saying if they like us." "Oh, lighten up, Freshchek," Brekchek muttered, and took another heavy pull of his beer. Before waving another, the 5 brothers were laughing and enjoying themselves then, helping themselves to the food that was brought over. They had no idea what it was, but they were at it nonetheless. Some of the humans at the other tables would look their way from time to time and raise their mugs. The Althusians would return the gesture and then drink, finding it hard to keep up with the humans. Even their women appeared to down gallons of the stuff, but that was likely just the impression rather than the reality. They were trying to wrap their heads around all the flavors and smells and sounds that they were being bombarded with, having very little to compare it to from their own culture, which was fairly utilitarian and filled with stories about bettering the hives. Who wanted any of that when humans had all of this? And it was just one festival. Soon Kainchek was ignoring the others, who were talking about making sure that they visited another continent for some sort of costume festival at the end of the month. He was staring at one of the Bavarian women who kept eyeing him. He saw her smile as she sipped at her beer, and then closed one eye, but not the other as she rose up from her table. Leaning away from him, he stared deeply into the fluff of her skirt, hoping to see more than just her legs. She walked back towards the area he knew the bathrooms were in and looked back at him very clearly before rounding the corner. "I'll be right back. I need to train the dragon," he muttered, quickly standing up and bumping the table as the others complained, grabbing the stains so that they didn't spill. He wasn't paying attention to them, though, instead walking down the way that the woman had gone. He ignored the wood carvings behind him and looked at the 3 doors. One had a window in it, and he figured that it would be the kitchen, and the other 2 had some human letters written on them, but he didn't know what they meant. As he stared at the door on the left open, and he saw that woman inside, beckoning him closer. He thought back to the Krishna myth and followed her, quickly setting his hands to her sides. He didn't know quite what to do, only that he wanted to feel her, hands roaming over her body as she leaned against him. She was doing that human thing along his chin. Kissing? It felt nice, but she seemed to be licking him more than kissing him. He didn't care up until he felt her teeth sink into the flesh of his throat, and he gasped in pain, shoving her back. He felt something rip and looked on in horror as he saw the blue blood dripping from the lips as she grinned at him. There was a noise, and he turned, seeing the human stepping out from one of the stalls. The last thing that he saw was a mallet swinging down in his face. "So, if we keep a tight schedule, we should be able to make it in time," Frekchek was saying. "Don't fret so much, Frekchek. Relax, enjoy yourself," Frekchek was saying before gulping down even more beer. "Hey, has anyone seen Kainchek?" Freshchek asked. Not since he went to the bathroom," Nyekchek said as they glanced around. "Maybe he found the legendary Krishna." The others laughed and grinned at that, but Freshchek stood up. "I'll go check on him. I need to go anyway." He wandered back towards the bathrooms, noticing the strange wood carvings that depicted some sort of fight between the humans and the pointed horned creature that they saw elsewhere. Shrugging, he looked at the 2 doors and figured that he had to be for the bathroom and just picked one at random. As he pushed open the door, he saw someone inside and heard a female scream. Sorry, he muttered, and he stepped back out, quickly entering the other door. He recognized the white porcelain things the humans used and figured that he had the right one this time. He struggled with the Bavarian garb for a while until he figured out how to get himself free so that he could relieve his bladder into the designated area. Once he was done, he tucked everything back into place and turned around. Once he'd stepped outside, though, he was staring at a wood carving, and was the man eating the pointed creature? or was it the other way around? He tilted his head one way, and then another, staring at the scene in front of him, unsure what he was looking at. "Hey there!" A voice made him jump, and he saw one of those human women standing at the door that he figured was the kitchen. "Your friend said you might also like to find the Krishni." Freshcheck blinked at it, and then approached her, entering the door. As it swung shut, there was a heavy thud. It had been another 10 minutes before Neckcheck had stopped Freshcheck from jabbering on about this and that. Okay, now both Neckcheck and Freshcheck are missing. Before he could even make a point ordering the others to go looking for them, they saw a pair of human women walk past, giggling. "Hello, boys. I think your friends mentioned something about finding a mystical creatures. Glad that you're all having such a nice time." The other three relaxed then. "Oh," Neckcheck said simply. "Guess Gaincheck was right." "That's very interesting. I wasn't sure that a human stance was on the Althusian's attractiveness," Rekcheck was saying. "Guess that answers that," Brekcheck said with a grin. And then they slowly stood up, as on unsteady legs. I need to go drain it as well. Promise I won't get seduced by any Krishni." He grinned and staggered back towards the bathrooms. He saw the 3 doors in his drunken haze and stepped through the third one. He saw a red meat piled up in various areas, cooktops and stoves all working to feed the hungry guests. Then he frowned as he saw some blue meat near the grinder. There was blue blood all over the floor of the area as a human pressed something into the meat grinder. Was that an arm? His eyes went wide and he saw that and he gasped out. The chefs and butchers turned, seeing him. "Shaiba," one of them muttered, but he turned and tried to run out. Staggering heavily though, the alcohol was filling his system. He made it into the hall when a cleaver threw through the air, sinking into his back of his neck. They descended on him, one reaching down to cut his throat as they dragged him back into the kitchen. Neckcheck leaned back a bit. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" Vreckcheck asked, looking up from his book. Before Neckcheck could go on, the music seemed to change and a bunch of people cheered, moving towards an open area near them as they started to dance. He looked over and found the human woman pulling on his arm. "Come, you must dance." But I was... "Dance, you must." She was insistent, and he looked at Frackcheck, who smiled and shrugged. So Neckcheck let himself be pulled away from the table. He looked back at Frackcheck but couldn't see his brother anymore. Just a crowd of humans. Maybe another woman had asked him to dance as well. Neckcheck began to dance then, moving as his brothers showed him, dancing to the music, smiling and laughing as it went on. But once that song had ended, his smile faded. The humans moved back from the dance floor, leaving him alone at the center. All around him the Bavarians had formed a human wall. They were chanting something in a language that he didn't understand. The warrior had no idea what was going on. It was Frackcheck. Where was his brothers? The chanting grew louder and louder, and as it reached a violent crescendo, some of the humans parted. He gasped as he saw the massive human figure wearing some sort of giant mask. Or maybe it wasn't a human, but a creature that had the body of a human and the head of one of those stags Frackcheck had seen that were carved everywhere. The creature was shirtless, body coated with designs painted in blue. And then Neckcheck realized that the blue wasn't paint. It was the blood of his brothers. The warrior roared out, only to have his bellow returned by the creature as they charged one another. They slammed into each other, the soft-shelled Althusian having never been tested in true battle. Until now. He was drunk and nearly feral in his rage as he fought, first swinging out slamming into the figure with a head of a stag. But the other was experienced and steady, and yet Neckcheck wore himself out, swinging and landing body blows, but keeping him from getting any real hits in. He began to go in his own offensive finally, punching and Neckcheck in the face, over and over, rattling his brain as the Althusian saw stars and spots. Finally, Neckcheck collapsed to his knees, and the humans cheered out, starting to chant once more. But this time it was something even more dark and evil. The warrior struggled, but then the thing with the head and the stag gripped Neckcheck's arms, pulling them back as he was kept on his knees. This time a small figure in black shrouds, shriveled with age it seemed, slowly walked out of the crowd. In one hand she held a dagger, and in the other some ancient book. The crowd went silent as she began to recite something ancient and cryptic. Neckcheck struggled, but the stag-headed man held him fast. The old woman approached him, lashing out with the knife as she cut open his shirt. Then he howled in pain as she gripped his chest, diving the dagger deep at an angle to get between the hidden chest scale and the rest of his ribs. She drove the blade in deeper, prying the scale off as he screamed. Blue blood pouring down his chest and stomach, his blue heart beating within. And she gripped it in the old hand, and eyes twitched as she fell unconscious with agony. The blade moved quick and precise despite her age. She held it in the air as it beat once, twice, 3 times, and stopped, pouring out still more blood over her fingers as the crowd cheered. The humans had parties, and many of the modern ceremonies known out to the galaxy were about getting drunk and having fun. But this hid the darker side that the humans had been careful to conceal. For every 100-year-old party, there was an older, deeper meaning that went back thousands of years. They had told Xenos that their old rituals simply faded away to give to the new ones, but that wasn't true. The old rituals just became harder to find, tucked away in the dark and secret, kept alive by only the truest of believers. The truth was that the human culture was so interesting because we had to make up new ways to get some of the thrill that we used to experience, back in the old days when the old ones spoke to us directly. In those ancient forests, barren steppes, and stone circles, getting drunk and having fun was all well and good, but nothing could compare to the rush of ritual sacrifices. This is humanity. We're so interesting because we're insane. End of story. If you enjoyed this story and wish to support the author, the link is down below. If you would like to support this channel, there are numerous ways to do so. They will also be listed in the description down below. But the easiest way to help this channel is to share it, subscribe, and like. And, as always, I will see you all in the next video, and I hope that you have a good one. Cheers!